So one of the results of the Council of Trent and all those reforms that the church did, the sort of counter reforms, essentially, was that the Catholic Church stopped its decline and it restabilized. It really did look like in the 1500s the Catholic Church was in a lot of trouble. But because of this stabilization, and because the Catholic Church then became sort of the Christian arm of missionary work in the world. Protestants really didn't go out to the Americas for another couple hundred years. The Protestants were focused on Europe. Catholics were focused on Europe and everywhere else in the world, which really gave between that and this sort of stabilization, essentially the Catholic Church continues to be a dominant force for the next hundreds of years. All right, that's great. So we do know this. One of the results of all that reform is that it sort of worked, I guess you could say. It kept things from getting worse for the Catholic Church. But one of the things we saw during this church crisis, so let's just take a little tangent here for a second. During this crisis, when you have wars happening, again, that the whole mood in Italy and the church itself, that it looked like nobody knew the church was going to be stabilized. It looked like the church was splitting apart into pieces. And what does that mean then? If you're a loyal Catholic, like what does that mean? What does this tell you about how the world is? It means things are really unstable, really uncertain. During this church crisis, one of the ways we see this visually is in art. The realism and neoclassicism sort of the high Renaissance period is replaced by what we might call symbolic emotionalism, or what we call Mannerism. And let me just give you, here's a good, these two pictures here, it's a good sort of initial example of this. This is David. I don't know what this is. This is, I think, the rape of the Laodicean women. This is Michelangelo did this. You guys know the David. And again, here's the deal, right? While David is what we call realist, not in the sense that this is like a photograph of David or anything like that, but it's an idealized picture of a human being, I guess you could say. He's ripped, he's got great abs, that kind of stuff. Everything is in proportion in terms of his arm length, his legs, all that kind of stuff. It's a human being. Then we come over here to this picture over here, this statue over here. And what you see is, okay, yeah, I recognize those are human beings, totally. But there are just a few things that are off about them. For example, I may have stood like this before. I have never stood like any of these over here or been in any of those positions. You'll note that it's so dramatic. It's like going to a play and where the actor like overacts. It just completely emotes just so that you can see how distraught they are or how happy they are. And it's like all act out through their entire body. That's the kind of thing. It's symbolic emotionalism, is that you can see the emotion not just in the face, so the face is going to be a big part of it. You can see the emotion in the face, you can see the emotion in the body, movement, positioning, all that. Like, what's the emotion of David here? David's emotion is, what up? What's the emotion over here? Terror, rage, all that kind of stuff. So there's two things that you can really think about when you think about Mannerism. There's probably more than this, but I find these two things to be the best way to distinguish Mannerism from the earlier Renaissance and from the later Baroque period. Number one is going to be this emotion that is displayed in both the face and the body movements. Like, you can tell when you look at that thing. It may not look exactly human, but it is definitely giving me a human emotion, whether it's happiness, sadness. I know. I don't have to really sit there and think, what's on this person's mind? You get it. The other thing is going to be, and I'll show you this in a little bit here, is the use of light and dark. So keep those two things in mind. Let's look at a couple more examples. What I would do if we were together, which we're not, so I'm going to ask you to do this right now. So what I want you to do is stand up wherever you are, unless you're driving, then just keep driving. I want you to stand up, and I want you to look at one person in this picture. Find one person in it. It doesn't matter. Any of those people. Okay, now, where you are right now, I want you to get into that position. I want you to form your body just like that person. I guess you could do it from this one over here as well. The point is that it's you might be able to pull it off, but it's not really comfortable. It's not really catching you midstream. And then if we look at sort of the so that's number one. You can stop doing that now. You can sit back down. It's weird, right? The positioning is just, it's not that it's not possible. It's just not probable. You probably won't ever be in that position ever. It's weird things. And then if you look at this, like, I can't remember who this is right here, but that's a lot of abs. I mean, I've seen the infomercials about developing abs, and there's none of those people have that many abs going on. I mean, there's just things that are just off, just a little anatomically off. Let me see here, what else? Let's go to the next slide. This is a little harder to do when you guys aren't actually here when I can do this. So we'll look at, okay, this is what they call, this motif is called Madonna and Child. Okay, so it's the Virgin Mary and baby Jesus, all right? And this is Middle Ages, medieval, high Renaissance, and this is Mannerism. So again, we can kind of compare these three different styles in this one type of theme. Here, this is the one that we probably look at and say, I wrap my head around that. I kind of get that. Baby Jesus looks like a baby. And in fact, remember Mannerism and remember humanism is that it really emphasizes how great human beings are. So it's not weird that you would present Jesus as human as possible. That is part of his, the greatness of him. But then we look over here at the Middle Ages where, your humanity is not the greatest thing in the world. It's your spirituality. The human stuff is crap and needs to be gotten rid of. It's not that crazy that Jesus is presented as a middle-aged accountant right there. Kind of creepy looking Jesus, adult baby. I don't really know how to phrase that very well. But again, this idea of adult Jesus, baby Jesus, to really embrace the humanness of who Jesus was. He wasn't always sort of born Jesus. He was baby Jesus. So that's one thing to look at here. Another thing, if we go over here to Mannerism, like you can see, like this is called, the name of the painting is actually the Madonna of the Long Neck. I mean, that's a serious neck right there. That is, I mean, it's one of those things that if she was walking down the street, I don't think she could actually hold her head up. It's crazy long. And then look at her body. Like imagine she stood up. It'd be very, I don't know what the word is, disproportioned, I guess is the best way I can say it. She would be incredibly tall, and the proportions would all be off. Look at baby Jesus here. Look at Jesus. I mean, that's a weird looking baby. Between you and me, that's a weird looking baby. If I saw that baby, I would say, whoa, hold on, what's happened to the baby? Were they stretched? Did you pull them out of the womb? What's going on there? I don't understand what's happening. Again, this gives you an example of these things. Another thing I want to just highlight in this, as opposed to the other ones, is the use of dark and light, and how the light is drawing your eyes to certain things in the painting. Like, for example, the brightest thing in this is really going to be baby Jesus right there. And, again, probably mom. And so those are the two things it really wants to highlight in the whole thing. All right. I'm good with that. There's probably more to look at here. Take a look at these, even though I wrote all over the page. I can't erase it. But take a look at those and just see if you can find sort of things that will help you identify, like what's going on between these eras. You saw this painting in the video, the Tintoretto, but again, that use, there's still the symbolic emotionalism you can see on their face, where you can see faces, I'm trying to think here. But you can sort of see on their face things, and how they are moved, how they're positioned is really important. They're not just standing there or posing there, they are moving. actively moving. But the bigger thing I want to point out from this is just the use of light and dark. Like, what are your eyes drawn to? How does the light pull your eyes to the things to be seen? How does the darkness sort of keep things off to the side? One more painting from this. Again, another example of Mannerism. And it's too small to really do much with, but you can sort of see, again, the use of dark and light, and you can see the body movements. It doesn't look like the anatomies are that far off from what they would usually be, but there is still the expressiveness in what they're doing. I have one more painting here. This is going to be later, probably the end of Mannerism, the beginning of Baroque. This is a guy named Caravaggio. And you can see that a lot of the anatomical, a lot of the weird sort of movements are kind of toned down. But you do still see the symbolic emotionalism in the face. And I'll just point out that it's not going to be a coincidence that during this era, when the visual art is all about symbolic emotionalism, is the same time we're going to see a shift, which we'll talk about during the music times, towards opera. That opera becomes one of the main ways that music is done during that period. Because if there's one thing you can say about opera, it's symbolic emotionalism. It is that over-emoting, both in action, what you're doing on stage, but also in the music itself. Like, everything is just, oh, I'm in love and my whole world is amazing, and oh, this isn't working out, so I'm going to kill myself, and there's a whole song about that. It's very symbolic emotionalism. It's actually not telling much of a story. It's not about the story at all. It's about the emotion itself. Here again, you can see, like, nobody has this many crinkles on their forehead, I don't think. But it is still not like what that's doing is that's conveying this sort of surprise, this study that Thomas has as he's looking at Jesus' wounds. What we do see, though, is that, again, after Mannerism is going to go till probably the late 1500s. And then it's going to, the end of the Council of Trent, and things kind of stabilize, and the uncertainty that's behind that, the things that sort of pushed Mannerism, it eases up. There's a little more certainty, there's a little less kind of craziness, and the art kind of follows suit in the sense that it kind of tones down a little bit. Humanism and the Renaissance get pushed aside. Those things are going to lead us down bad paths. And so there's more this move toward restraint and plainness. You're going to see this in the music. When we talk about sort of the music before and after the Reformation, I guess you've already seen it. That was last week. I guess I'm doing this before that. But there's essentially Palestrina with the Mass, kind of tones down the Mass. The Mass before was polyphonic, and it was all over the blah, 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 like that. And then Palestrina comes along during and then after the Council of Trent. And his whole bit is that we're going to make this a little more restrained, but still as beautiful. You don't have to be crazy, emotive, all that kind of stuff, complex to get across. The message is as important as the beauty of the music, and maybe even more so important. So tone down the music so you can see the person within. Make content more clear and effective. Again, compare the content of this picture right here, with the content of this picture right here, or with this picture right here, or with these pictures. Like, there's a sense in which this is much more clear. The message is getting across. That's the main point. It's not about the glory of the artist. It's about the audience seeing the message that needs to be conveyed. All right, I'm going to have you look at one more quick video, and then we'll come